All right, so like I said, my name is Sarah Hill and I am with Target, and I have had the pleasure of getting to know these lovely people on the call with me today through the Target Accelerators program, which you can learn more about at targetaccelerators.com, which I won't go into too much today. I actually won't go into at all, primarily talking about the capabilities and technologies that they are working with. So we have Spencer with Radar, Alex with Rapitag, and Jake with LISNR joining us today, and we'll be talking about activating the physical store, in which they are all doing very innovative ways through their technologies and capabilities. So they'll each present quick kind of 4-minute overviews of their technologies and their companies, and then we'll dive into discussion and Q&A. Before we do that, I want to put another little plug in for some alternate sessions that are happening this week with 8 additional Target Technology Accelerator alumni that are diverse in both the types of companies that they run as well as the demographics of the founders. So I encourage you guys to attend those that are happening on both Wednesday and Thursday. It just so happened that the presenters today are 3 white male founders, which are great and wonderful, and I love them very much. But I hope that you recognize the lack of diversity and that you hold me accountable for future discussions, that the representation will be different in future sessions. So I want to call that out, and we can definitely have discussion and conversation around that topic in and of itself. But I want to start off and do some quick kind of soft introductions of our speakers. I'll actually probably just kick off to introduce Jake and LISNR. So LISNR came through the 2019 Tech Accelerator program. And the first time that I heard about LISNR and their capability and their technology, the founders actually had to repeat it back to me twice. So their capability is that they transfer secure data over ultrasonic audio. Again, because it had to be repeated to me twice, that's secure data through ultrasonic audio waves, which is pretty remarkable. And today we have Jake, who's incredible, an SVP at LISNR, to provide a quick overview and some insights into what they're working on. Jake, do you want to take it over?
Absolutely. Thank you, Sarah. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, I hear you well.
Very good. Well, yes, it does take a minute to get your head around exactly what it is that we do, but hopefully in the 4 that Sarah's given me, I can get everyone up to speed. And I'll start by saying that we are actually a minority company. I don't represent that with this accent 100%, but my boss and my boss's boss are both minorities and doing particularly well. So I'll consider myself to be representing someone outside of a boring old white male for now. So you got a slide that hopefully everyone can see right now. That's our 2 founders, Chris and Rodney. Back in 2012, they started this business in a much sexier way than we've taken it in recent years. They started with the Swedish house mafia, sending really small packets of data via the PA system to everyone's devices in the entire audience. This allowed for people's mobile devices to sync with the light show. They then went on to the Who at Wembley, Jay-Z at Budweiser Made in America, and we're really just doing some pretty sexy stuff. Then the likes of myself came along and said, hey, why don't we do something as cool as like banking and payments and retail? And clearly, we've gone in a slightly different direction ever since. Now, the important thing to do at this point is to get a quick level set on the actual tech, because it does sound a little bit overwhelming to begin with. But the way that I first allowed the penny to drop was thinking back to the old modems and the old faxes. Everyone remembers, or those of us that are old enough can remember, what it was like to use dial-up modem. Now, I'll spare you the sound of that, but often enough I do play it to remind everyone. That was data over audio. So that's exactly what we do at LISNR. Now, the main differences of this, that was audible. So what we've done is we've raised it up to be ultrasonic, so you don't have to hear it. That's a good start. Now, the other thing we do is we do it through the air, as opposed to doing it through a copper wire. We do it from device to device through air. These days, everyone has a supercomputer sitting in their pocket, which allows our algorithm to do the error correction in a way that just wasn't available back in the 90s. So if you've got that concept, you've got a pretty good idea of what our company does, what our underlying technology does. It's also a good place to sort of level set. We're not sending video files through this. This is small packets of data, probably more what you would send through a QR code. And if we did try to send photos, it would go along the screen like the internet did back in like 95. So this is actually a spectrogram, and it shows down the bottom, if you see that green line, that's literally what dial-up internet looks like, that big fuzzy bit. If you look up right up the top, the LISNR logo is sort of covering it up, but at about 20,000 hertz there, you have our signal. So this is well above human hearing. Human hearing is actually more around a normal telephone conversation. Everything will happen at 4,000 or less. Even, animals can hear. Some animals can actually pick up our tone, but essentially it means that no one can hear it, and it appears automatically. So if you understand what the underlying tech does, where it is, anything with a speaker, anything with a microphone can communicate with small pieces of data. This makes us similar to Bluetooth, NFC, or QR code. Probably we find ourselves being compared most often to QR code because we're controlled at the device level. So NFC, Bluetooth, both through the handset, which has pros and cons, but is certainly more limiting, especially when it comes to how you choose to use NFC in particular. So we're most often looked at as an alternative to QR code. And when we are, there's specific things that make us a little bit different. The ability to control distance. Obviously, a QR code, you have to get pretty close to be able to scan that, as with NFC. With ultrasonic, you can actually use volume on the devices to determine how far you want that signal to go. So we support use cases anywhere from 12 inches through to clearly the size of a stadium. But these days, we're normally between 12 inches and around 6 to 8 for some of the COVID cases. Full duplex, so just the ability to be able to send information back and forth. On a really basic level, this just means a QR code, especially if you're in an offline environment like you might be in some of our developing countries that we work with, you're not going to know that that payload has gone through. Full duplex simply allows an acknowledgement to come back to the original device, so both devices know that that transaction's happened successfully. And finally, merchant controlled. So the ability to control UX, to control payload, to control everything. Our SDK will allow you to choose what token you want to be sending, what data at all. It's all free text that you can send as you need to send. So what does this mean when it comes down to retail? These are the use cases that we spend most of our time, finessing. And we spent a lot of time on mobility, and honestly, it was taking probably the majority of our roadmap up until the start of COVID. We were live with rideshare partners around the world, bus companies, just as a ticketing alternative, much quicker getting people onto the vehicles, using ultrasonic versus QR code, which was the alternative. But specifically, and to drive it home, what we've been doing with Target is BOPUS use cases. And most of the work has been around the drive-up use case and seeing if we could create a better way of authenticating that person as they drive up, sending the required payload to make sure that's a secure transaction. And Sarah may tell you that her job is particularly glamorous, but what she won't tell you is she's been testing out technology in the middle of a Minneapolis winter in a parking lot with the use case I'm about to highlight next. So this is actually a video. I'm hoping it's going to come through. I'll wait for a thumbs up from Sarah to make sure everyone can hear this okay.
These days, simply going to the store has become a lot more complicated, but it doesn't have to be. Thanks to LISNR, contactless pickup has finally become a true reality. LISNR is the leading ultrasonic data transfer company. LISNR's ultrasonic data over sound technology enables proximity verification and contactless transactions for merchants, financial service providers, and mobility companies. This type of technology is a game changer for both the customer and the retailer. LISNR's contactless data over audio solution enables retail companies to seamlessly authenticate a curbside customer at a distance of up to 6 feet. That's not possible with QR codes and other data technologies. It's as easy as lining up your microphones and letting sound do the rest. What's great for retailers is the ultrasonic data over technology can be customized to work within their existing contactless transaction flow. What's great for the customer is that technology is reliable and safe. Welcome to a more seamless and secure commerce experience. This is LISNR.
Okay, there's my 4 minutes.
Awesome. I love that the video came over well.
There you go.
So like I mentioned in the chat, please feel free to drop any specific questions that you have. I have some questions kind of preloaded for all of the panelists today, but I think in the meantime, while you guys are thinking about questions for them and we can kind of get into our Q&A, we can introduce Spencer, who's the founder and CEO of Radar. And Spencer is working on a really proprietary and novel approach to what many of us in the industry have thought as kind of an antiquated technology, which is RFID. It's really incredible, and he's pairing both RFID and computer vision to create this really interesting approach to inventory management and amazing other additional use cases that he can tell you about now. It looks like your deck is loaded.
Great, awesome. Thanks, Sarah. So as mentioned, my name is Spencer Hewett. I'm the founder and CEO of Radar, and what we're building is a fully integrated RFID and computer vision platform to automate different functions in retail, which I'll get into. But overall, what we're really trying to do at Radar is tell you exactly what is in your store and precisely where it is. And the reason this is important is a few things. So one is that if you don't know what's in your store, you end up having a large amount of loss, $1.1 trillion of lost revenue every single year across retail due to out of stocks and overstocks, just over ordering or not having the right things in the right place at the right time. The way this might have manifested for some of you is you walk into a store and 10 to 25% of the items that you're looking for are not actually on the sales floor just because they don't know that they're sold out. Or you order something for buy online, pick up in store, and you get there and you're told that unfortunately it's actually not available and you have to order it online or go somewhere else. And when this happens to customers, about 55% of them leave the store immediately and don't give them, the retailer, a second chance. So this is where, and as mentioned, what we're focused on is helping to automate or augment these different use cases. So fulfillment, number one, inventory, analytics, and autonomous checkout. And the way we do this is through a combination of sensors and software. So at the heart of our solution is a proprietary sensor. This sensor has the ability to read and locate RFID tags in 3 dimensions, more precisely than any other system, as well as use its 4 cameras to observe the environment and locate all people in the store within 3D as well. So we're able to understand what someone's picked up so that when they leave with that product, we can charge them automatically. We're able to measure things like team member productivity, et cetera, and service all this data through our API to our mobile app and store dashboards. So high level, the first application we built on top of the platform is the Radar mobile app. So this is something that a team member in a store would be using to find products, to do their job more easily, so they can search for any item like they would on search for like a restaurant in Google Maps. And they can see that locations update as they move. This also helps them with a key use case in these times, which is order fulfillment and curbside pickup. So instead of hunting around the store for an item or not even knowing if it's actually in stock, they can know for sure exactly where it is and pick it more effectively. And then lastly, it helps them understand what's missing from the sales floor in real time so they can keep the sales floor stocked perfectly. So when you walk in, you can find what you're looking for and leave satisfied. So kind of just skipping ahead, a few things that differentiate us significantly from the market are the following. So number one is our location accuracy on the RFID tags. So other systems will achieve on the order of plus or minus 10 to 15 feet in location accuracy. So they might tell you what aisle something in, maybe. We can tell you exactly where on the shelf it is. So we achieve accuracy that's on the order of 1 foot. And we do this not only in X and Y like other systems, but also in Z. So we get the 3-dimensional position at all times. And the problem, the reason this is hard is because, as probably Jeff will know, the reason this is hard is the following. So inside of a store, there are a lot of walls, there's a lot of objects that are metallic, there's floors, ceilings, and what's happening is you're constantly seeing reflections from the RFID tag off of these walls, floors, ceilings, and these reflections cause the signal from the tag to take an infinite number of paths back to the reader. And typically, systems try to figure out, okay, which of these infinite paths is the one line of sight path, and that's very hard to do. So they end up getting, an answer where it's like, okay, we know where this thing is within, plus or minus, 10 to 15 feet. And we've really come up with a unique algorithm that has allowed us to completely solve this issue and get a reliable location, no matter what's happening in the environment at any given time. And once we solved that, the next thing was, okay, how do we actually get these locations quickly? So the other piece we've done is we figured out a way to get the location on a single read instead of needing tens, hundreds, thousands of reads to converge on the location like other systems might. And the third and piece I'm going to end on is the most interesting thing for me is kind of how you combine this modality of RFID with vision. So one of the things that we're doing here at Radar is as we locate a product, we're able to cross-reference that location with what the camera is seeing. So if you go and you pick up a teddy bear in a Target, for example, and there's an RFID tag in that teddy bear, as you move that teddy bear around the store, we can gather tens of thousands of images of that item because the tag can tell us where in the camera's field of view that item is. And as we gather those images from different angles, different lighting conditions, we can then teach the camera to recognize that product by sight over time. So you can imagine the application of this, over the next several years will become quite interesting. So that's super high level what we're working on at Radar. If we have time later, I'd love to show a quick kind of sneak peek of our demo dashboard. But I'll let Alex go ahead.
Thanks, Spencer. Super amazing. Thanks for saying that you can purchase that teddy bear at Target. But no, it's incredible what you guys are all working on, and I feel like I want to comment on all of your technologies and how I've seen it and how it's all. Anyway, I will turn the floor over to Alex, who is the last founder and presenter today, and then we can hop into the discussion and dialogue. But he's actually based out of Munich, Germany. So good evening to you, Alex Schneider. I think it's probably like 9 p.m. In Germany right now. But Rapitag has developed a unique high-tech solution in combining both Bluetooth capabilities paired with self-checkout for an assets protection use case tag use cases. So Alex, I don't see your video. You can start presenting.
Then I have to restart after the presentation. I try to share the screen. Note if it's working.
It is.
Yep, looks good.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks, Sarah. I'm Alex, and at Rapitag developed a IoT platform which combines contactless self-checkout and anti-theft protection. Theft anti-theft is not a topic people want to talk about. Important. But let's talk a little bit about self-checkout. I mean, in the past, self-checkout the goal was to save time and improve the customer experience. And this is still important, but the new between customers and employees, right? Go scenario, which means scan the product barcode or an QR code with your smartphone and pay mobile. The shrinkage, the theft increase, and especially in these new times where the customer faces are covered. But we need more contactless solutions in retail at all. So self-checkout. Losses to self-checkout went up 5 times. And these are only the numbers of pre-corona. I mean, already everything around 1% is a big loss. If it grows to 5%, that's insane. Today, theft in US retail means an annual loss of around $50 billion. that are $14 billion every day. Our solution fits perfect products and fashion. And these are categories that have already anti-theft tags. I can show some later if my camera works again. And these anti-theft tags are in market for decades. But the tags itself, they don't fit today's shopping behavior. So we at Rapitag bring them to the next level. Tag is replacing these established asset protection tags and turn them into connected IoT devices to offer fully customized and every security tag has a unique device identification, and we call it internally the offline code. This turns every product basically into a contactless point of sale. And we have 4 simple checkout. Just taps the Rapitag with the smartphone, and you don't have to look for a barcode or QR code or whatever. We use Bluetooth, so it works on every smartphone, like NFC. So close the smartphone next to the tag. A mobile retailer's app, our SDK just get integrated into that, and that magic, the tag opens automatically. The customer can remove it in the store, and he just drop it in the bin before he exit. And then the customer just walk out through the existing security gates at the exit without any queue. Invented. This way we reduce the friction in the customer journey or in a self-checkout journey when it comes to protect. Beside of that, we're faster than existing solution. So we speed up already the normal checkout when you go to a normal checkout counter and want to pay cash. We reduce labor costs and save time when then the employee have to remove it. We tested our solution already with several retailers across Europe. We had no shrinkage, and surveys showed that customers and employees added value to this solution. We developed basically one of the world's cheapest and most precise indoor Bluetooth tracker. So like radar, we know exactly store, and we can use that information also for contactless sales support. So we allow the customer to check the device, and this really benefits in a pickup or drive, because at the moment the picker has to remove the anti-theft tag, but he's not allowed to do that. Talk of the stores of the future, and we already heard today that in the future these stores are small distribution hubs for same-day. So the picker can find the product very fast, and then he removed the anti-theft tag without any support from the team member. And so we can increase the number of picked products per hour and the delivery process. And this is another use case. What we could also do, we could also protect the way from the store to the customer's home. In the store, but deliver the tag product and let the customer remove the tag at home with a smartphone. So everyone involved in the last mile can be sure that deliver receive. So contactless checkout, asset protection in a secure way, improving retail processes, that's Rapitag.
Awesome. Thank you, Alex. I almost said Spencer. Thank you, Alex. You can, I don't know if you, perfect. Okay, your video isn't on.
Screen.
Perfect. Sounds good. Okay, so we only got one question throughout your presentations, but I think it's actually something that we discussed as a team prior to this. So I think that if we dive into this question that was directed at you, Spencer, so I'll let you kind of kick it off, but I think it would be really interesting to hear the perspective of both Jake as well as Alex as well, and talk about your choice of using RFID instead of going pure vision. And I think the respective technologies that you guys have worked in, and kind of like why you continue to pursue that path and also weave in other technologies throughout your development of your companies and technologies and capabilities.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a very good question. Basically, the way we look at it is, I guess like vision is something that makes perfect sense for like autonomous vehicles, right? Because you have, you know, a car that is moving through its environment. It's going to interpret its environment as it moves through. And it has like a fixed set of cameras and like a relatively fixed set of compute to do that. When you try to then look at a problem like autonomous retail, the space is much, much larger. And there are many, many things that you need to be tracking simultaneously. And the margins are also quite thin. So basically, the solution requires a modality that can cover a large amount of space with relatively little cost per square foot. So if you look at an Amazon Go type solution, they're going to end up putting a camera every 3 feet in the store. There's a large amount of compute behind each of these cameras. They're also putting weight sensors on every shelf. So, you know, one of the properties of like visible light is, you know, it doesn't travel through solid objects unless they're like glass or like, you know, see-through, right? Whereas the radio frequency, it travels through, you know, shelving, it can travel through walls, and the coverage area is much, much larger. So you're looking at, you know, the potential to cover a store, you know, with several thousand square feet with a single sensor as we scale up with radar. Whereas with visible light, you're always going to be subject to occlusions of people and carts and then putting objects underneath their jacket, etc. So you end up needing to increase infrastructure to counteract that, which then increases compute, which then increases the cost. So our estimate for what an Amazon Go would cost on a per square foot basis is on the order of $400 per square foot. Whereas, you know, with RFID and radio frequency as primary modality, you can get down to on the order of $2 per square foot. So it's, you know, order of magnitude difference, or sorry, multiple orders of magnitude difference vis-a-vis vision, which is why we made the decision to use vision as a supporting and secondary modality as opposed to the primary one.
Love it. I think a lot of this kind of topic that's at hand of like the store of the future or the role of the store and how it's evolving, I think a lot of it comes back to like this benchmarking to what everybody thought is this like is going to be the future of this Amazon Go store. And we've seen a lot of retailers that have rolled out this concept of scan and go, autonomous checkout, whatever the kind of name for it is, and then roll it back for a lot of different reasons. And I think you guys are kind of living that, which is really fascinating to see how you're providing some of the capabilities to provide that seamless checkout experience. But the concept of just one store that can do that immediately right now, I think, Spencer, you brought up a really good point of just the cost to that is very high. I would say astronomical, I guess it's all relative. But Alex, do you want, actually, I'll turn it over to Jake first. Do you want to talk about kind of how you guys are pursuing the path with ultrasonic and also including a few other kind of capabilities and technologies into your guys' solution?
Yeah, absolutely. So we obviously have a bias towards ultrasonic as a communication layer, considering that's what we've been doing for around 9 years now. But we've become very good at identifying what ultrasonic is the best modality. And often we advise our customers to use QR code if that's more appropriate, or NFC if that's more appropriate. As a matter of fact, in our SDK, we have a failover to QR code for scenarios where a device might be broken or something like that. So for our work, as we often work alongside companies like Spencer's or Alex's and provide one component to what they do. But it comes down to what ultrasonic data transfer does best, which is the distance factor, bidirectionality, and also it will not go through walls. So as opposed to radio frequencies, obviously the wall may as well not be there. This will stop at as a physical barrier. So that does actually provide some advantages for certain use cases.
And Alex, do you want to talk about why you guys use Bluetooth for your specific use cases?
Yeah, I hope my video is now working.
Yep, it looks great.
So yeah, we had the decision of how we can transfer data. And we didn't know about LISNR as we started in 2015. So we thought, okay, which is on every smartphone working. So it was the time where NFC got with Apple Pay into the market. But first of all, Germany, Apple Pay at that moment was not in the market yet. So we thought, okay, Bluetooth is on every smartphone, NFC is not. We didn't know about LISNR audio, that would be cool too. And QR codes, we don't like QR codes because it's always a break in the journey. Because the QR code itself, it can't speak. Yeah, it's only one-way direction of communication. You only can read the QR code and send data back to the QR code. And so we decided, okay, we need something that works like NFC, but it's faster than or better in the communication than QR codes. So we decided to use Bluetooth. But we are not limited to that. Our main technology is that the tag, when you pay for a product, that the tag opens automatically. That's our solution. It's not the data transferring.
Awesome. Thanks, Alex and Jake. I think I like kind of what you guys said. I think Jake, you said it well, of like, there's instances where you encourage your customers and clients to be using different modes of technology for fail-safes. And I think that's something that I've seen with each of your companies as you've worked with Target and the other customers, kind of the journeys that you've been on of like really understanding what the problems are that like, you know, our associates are facing or our team members are facing. And then like, what is the scenario and how can we best like you utilize all of these capabilities and technologies to really create the most seamless kind of experience, which I think is something that is a strength of all of you guys and why you're doing well in the market. There's a couple of additional kind of questions in here. There's a Spencer for Spencer question. Do you want to, I don't know if you took a look at that yet, Spencer, but do you want to answer the question in terms of the real-time inventory tracking?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's a good question about how you can leverage RFID pre-store. So yeah, I think there's a ton of value in RFID pre-store, both for vendors and the retailer. We're actually looking at multiple use cases, you know, in the distribution center, for example, just because it turns out distribution centers are also not perfect. There is a significant amount of error that can accumulate in the inventory they think they're sending to a store versus what actually makes it there. And if your baseline of what you're, you know, when people receive inventory from the DC, typically they're taking them at their word and face value that it's accurate. And then that creates, you know, these downstream problems for the end customer. So pushing the technology back into the DC, into the supply chain does make a lot of sense because it allows you to have real data coming out of that so that you don't have that degradation of inventory over time. So that's definitely something we're looking at doing in the near future. I think the most value can be driven, however, from the in-store use cases because ultimately that's what the customer experience is. And you know, by having the ability to understand what's in that store and where it is, you can correct those issues with good communication with the rest of your supply chain. I don't know if that answered your question though, so feel free to put in the chat if you're asking something else.
I think it did, so I'll just keep going. Okay, Spencer's just the Spencer matrix, or not matrix, inception going on. I want to kind of tap into some of the things that I'm kind of pulling out, even from earlier today when Albert from Home Depot was talking about some of the success factors in testing and piloting. And one of the things that he mentioned was a kind of key success factor is the experience of the associate. At Target, we call them team members, but that experience. And can you guys talk a little bit about when you guys were building out your solutions and capabilities and even companies, how much of this was focused on the guests or the customers versus now, I think in your journeys, how much of it's focused on the team member? Alex, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. Good question. I mean, we always started with the customer point of view. I mean, we are in the asset protection field. It's all about preventing theft. So it's a little bit negative and reacting about something which is already happening. And we thought, okay, we need a process for the customer first, because if the customer don't use self-checkout, for example, for various reason, the solution will not pay off. And later, I would say 2 years, we found out that it would be also value for the team member or the shop assistant, because it's also time saving for him, for his daily work. In the end, in a B2B business, like all of our solutions are B2B, both. We need the end user and we need the employees.
Jake, you want to take a stab at that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as you know, Sarah, like a lot of what we ended up realizing is we do offer a significant amount of value from a security and user experience standpoint, but at the point where you might have to train up 50,000 staff members on a completely different flow through the store operations team, that value becomes somewhat diminished. So in everything that we build out, in the case of the use case that we showed earlier with Driver, it's making sure that it's very clear to the team member what they need to be doing. And if you can do it in one screen or less to show what used to happen, what happens now, you're in a good place. If you're ever thinking that you might have to train up a large group of an organization like Target, you're probably not going to get past the POC. So we spend as much time thinking about the team members' experience as we do the guests' experience.
Love it. Spencer, do you want to talk about
yeah,
that?
sure.
I feel like
So
we're very customer-facing.
I guess
A very customer-facing solution. Sorry.
Yeah, I think the impetus for the company was 100% customer facing, because I was super naive to the retail industry. I was just in a store and I was like, oh, waiting in line is annoying. We should figure out a way to eliminate lines. And then later, a couple years later, talking to actual retailers, I started to realize, oh, there's like all these other kind of business facing problems beyond just long lines. That this could help to solve. So I think that was kind of an evolution, but it didn't necessarily start out being like an inventory focused. It was definitely autonomous checkout focused, from the beginning, and then kind of inverted the order.
Love it. I think on that, each of you guys have gone through, and all the companies that come through the accelerator programs at Target, I think originally kind of pitch or describe their solutions as very guest focused, which is great because Target's very guest oriented. But I think by the end, like at the stages that you guys are at, like understanding that a lot of times like store operations and supply chain and the functions that are actually going to be implementing this and rolling it out are like a huge key, if not the key stakeholder in a lot of these decision making. Or a lot of retailers, because it's so critical that, like you said, Jake, if you're rolling this out to hundreds of thousands of team members or associates and it's causing a little bit of friction, that's not going to be an enjoyable experience. Okay, so one thing I do want to mention, because I think that this is a topic that comes up with a lot of the high-tech capabilities and solutions, I think especially with anything relating to vision, but I think every single one of the conversations that I've sat in, either internal to Target or otherwise, with each of your companies has brought up something around the topic of security, of like, regardless of, I think probably you guys have experienced this, anywhere you're pitching, there's like these hairs that go up on the back of their necks that are like, oh, this seems too good to be true, or like, it seems like this is amazing, but like, this can't be secure. What security protocols are you guys going through? Or can you guys talk a little bit about your journey through that, and then how you're taking as all of the security measures that you possibly can when developing out your companies? Jake, you want to start?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've approached this in a number of different ways, and to be honest, Visa is one of our larger customers and backers, and the hoops you have to jump through to be able to be a commercial partner of Visa's pretty dramatic. And one of the paths we may go to is, in fact, an open loop solution where you'll be able to have credit card transactions via the LISNR technology. In that particular case, we need to be as secure as anything else that's out there, if not more. Actually, based on what we're looking at, more. Now, in the case of our specific work with Target and some other retailers, we are uniquely secure in that it's very hard to pick up and intercept this frequency. And if you look at the basic way that 2D barcode or QR code technology uses rolling code to mean that whatever token, whatever payload is being sent is only good for a moment. So in the case of Target, the rolling code approach they have to their 2D barcode is something we could jump right on top of. And so essentially, we took something that was already very secure and made it more secure because you take the opportunity to have a screenshot out of the equation altogether. But if a bad actor wanted to try to get in and intercept that, they would, one, have to use a unique version of our SDK they'd have to record it first. Then they would have to play it back. Then they'd have to use a unique version of our SDK to turn that into something that was useful. And after all this effort, they would have a long string of numbers and letters that would mean nothing to them. So we're actually remarkably secure on that. And you also do have a first mover's advantage in that the bad actors haven't had a chance to really problem solve on it yet. So we're pretty well positioned from a security standpoint. And it does take up a good amount of our roadmap and hours spent, but it's always fun talking security.
So you're saying there's a chance, it's just a very, very, very small chance, you've given everyone the steps.
Yeah, I like to, that could be a good hackathon.
No, break it. Actually, that's crazy. Spencer has talked about, he actually works with like a hacking group in Germany that is like a bunch of these really, as you could imagine, intelligent people that I think people submit things like that to hack. Isn't that right, Spencer? Or, I mean, Alex.
Yeah, we had the biggest European hacker community in our first pilot store, and they tried to hack the tags itself. And we already were aware that Bluetooth is not the safest data transmission protocol. So we made the hardware itself as secure as possible. So as Jake said, if you read our Bluetooth signal, that means nothing. Yeah? The tag itself has to encrypt the data coming from the server. And if you know what's in between, that means nothing. Yeah? So after they to hack us, they invited us on their meetups to show our solution to a wider community. And then we had some kind of hackathon because we showed them what we did, and we got a lot of feedback from them how to improve both the hardware and the software.
I still can't wrap my mind around like this group of hackers. I just picture that. What is the one show that's like Hacker Man? Anyway. What?
They don't wear a mask. Maybe today because they have to in Germany, but there were normal guys working for BMW, which has the headquarter here in our city, and they are a normal job. For example, they are working on the keys for cars or on the security for the infotainment system or on stuff like that. So that were just normal guys, and we are just wondering why they are with a laptop in the store doing something. But it was an electronic store, so a consumer electronics store. So somebody with a laptop doesn't is obvious. So, but
wow.
Yeah, we know that after they called us a few days later that they were there.
That's so amazing and intriguing. I want to know so much more. Let's have a different breakout session on that. Spencer, do you want to answer the kind of security kind of question?
Yeah, I mean, I think this has been a learning experience for us. Some people, well, me in particular. So I would say, like for us, we don't really. Our main function is providing data to the retailer, right, that they don't have today. So really, it's like securing our hardware, making sure that we're only sending data out, a few ports, et cetera. So, we do some measures to physically secure the hardware, so no one can override, what's already going to be booted up and install their own version. But right now, I wouldn't say we're doing anything crazy fancy in security, because it's not really like our differentiator. It's more like a checkbox that we have to meet.
Well, I think you gave me a little nugget to kind of pivot a little bit of this discussion. I think a lot of the things that you guys are talking about in your solutions are very high tech, of like, you're able to do ultrasonic audio and these like very proprietary new ways of transferring information. And I think that there's an aspect of retail that, as we've listened both yesterday and today, the competitiveness of retail is essentially kind of become who can fulfill things the most efficiently, of like who can get things to guests fastest and the cheapest. But I think there's this kind of alternate aspect that is the information and the data gathering that you're getting in a safe way, obviously, and fully opted in, but the information that you're getting to be able to build out an understanding of who your guest is. And I think that that's something that's really compelling for each of the companies that you guys are, or each of the things that you guys are working on, is that it's not that you're just providing a capability, is that like, oh, I can send something from here to here more efficiently. It's that along with that, you're also providing a more robust view of the guest. And you're also able to, tell Target or any other retailer, provide them either more data or better data that they can have actionable insights into as well. So do you guys want to talk a little bit about kind of the actionable insights? That the technology is one aspect, but it's kind of creating that more holistic view of the guest and customer as well. Jake, do you want to start?
Yeah, why not? So it's very much a driver for our customers in that there's been a push for at least the last few years, and I guess it comes under the omni-channel umbrella, but to replicate the e-commerce experience in the physical store, or if you want an even worse term, phygital. Do you like that? Let's not make that a thing. So
it's going to be a thing, phygital.
If you think about the way that it comes through right now, as Gen Z are very comfortable with using their, the first thing they bought was through a mobile device. Millennials, first thing they bought was online. This is actually, for a large part of them, the preferred shopping experience is the e-commerce experience. Now, obviously, you can't try on, you can't do those sorts of things. So our customers, in general terms, are trying to break it down in a similar way. So they've got a funnel that they can perfect the same way they have their e-commerce funnel. If you look at something you can do with LISNR to begin with, it's just checking into a store and being able to receive that unique store ID, so you know specifically where that app owner has been, all the way through to checkout. And that means as someone goes through their journey in store, you can be sending appropriate messages. You can have in-aisle messaging coming through for certain promotions, etc., just by having little packets of data. Now, by the time you get this, not only do you have an experience that is preferred by Gen Z, but you also have this data that can allow you to be better, at merchandising, et cetera, et cetera. So that's, we spend a lot of our time working out how our technology can help make that, we say seamless versus frictionless, because sometimes you want a little bit of friction. You may want to say, hey, stop, we've got a coupon that we'd like you to consider. So we're all about seamless between e-com and in-store, and not so much frictionless.
I want to talk on the friction aspect a little bit later, but Alex, I think this is something that we've actually spoke on recently in some of your internal discussions at Target about this additional insight and information that you can gather.
Yeah, I mean, data is everyone is talking about data, but in the end, nobody's really understanding the whole topic or what that does mean. When you talk to a retailer or a potential customer for our solution, first we have to prove that there's a return on invest. We save time, we save process costs, we save money, whatever, but we have a real value. And then we have additional collection of data. I mean, like radar, how is the product in movement? How is the customer in movement? how often a customer grabs a product and he don't buy that, or he did something else with it, put it in another shelf. All this kind of data, and it's important for the retailer to know that. And in physical stores, most data what actually exists is here in Germany. I'm not I don't want to talk about the US because they have a little bit another view on data itself. In Germany, it's restricted to collect data about customers. So in Germany, the stores normally have how many entered the store and leave it, and how many products get sold, and that's it. So you don't know who's your customer, which target group. You don't basically nothing. And then you have the e-commerce, and they know everything about the customer. And that's the major problem in Germany or in Europe retail.
Right. I think, there's probably trends of us adopting some of those similar viewpoints and stances on data and security and privacy and all of that. But hi, Spencer, welcome back. I don't remember if you heard the question, but I think it's particularly relevant for Radar right now, especially in what you guys are working on, is the additional data that you're gathering outside of just the pure kind of technology and capability of RFID and computer vision. And you're gathering so much more. I think you probably even the most out of the three here of the insights that you can glean with the information that you're gathering. Is your mic working? Okay, he just slapped me and said he'll be right back. I actually don't know exactly what time this ends, so I think that we can just keep chatting until maybe that there's not, nobody else is here, so.
Like music so much that everyone just leaves. I think
you make it so miserable for people that they just hop. But anyway, if you guys are still hanging around, please feel free to drop questions in for the group, and we'll keep addressing those. But while Spencer rejoins, the other kind of topic that I wanted to talk about is a little bit about the concept of friction. And Jake, I think you brought up something that's really interesting and compelling. I think it's really easy for people that say we want to be frictionless entirely. And I think to my example before of there was a bunch of retailers that rolled out these scan and go, and I have some friends in the industry that were joking and calling it scan and, or not scan and just go, or scan and just not pay, go, take and leave, and have since rolled them back. But do you want to talk a little bit, what you mentioned before is that a little bit of friction is actually a good thing?
Yeah, I mean, you bring up for loss prevention, there needs to be some element of friction. Now, it could be minimized dramatically, but there does need to be a point where you can intercept someone that may appear to be a bad actor or just have made a mistake. It's new technology. But more of what we focus on is the opportunity to interject into that buying journey when someone's in the store. Now, if you look at an e-commerce experience, for a long time, they've been recommending things to you. They've been saying, hey, wait a second, we're not going to get you to the cart as quickly as possible because we think you can add this. So there are ways of intercepting that shopper and increasing cart size that, by their very nature, add a certain amount of friction. So we go for seamless because we want to say that the experience should be both the same as the one that they see, the e-commerce experience, the m-commerce experience, but not necessarily frictionless. You just need to choose when you want to include the friction and what the benefit is. If you can get an ROI out of that and it's not unpleasant for the user, then there's probably a relatively large upside. If we all got to a truly frictionless world, retailers have kind of commoditized themselves to an extent. So the experience itself when you're in store should be considered beyond just let's get people in and out as quickly as possible.
I couldn't agree more. I think that's such a good point. And Target frequently says, like, we differentiate ourselves, or I think a lot of retailers would say this probably too, is the differentiation becomes the experience that you have in store. And so I think that is like maybe a collection of the like components of friction, or like an experience is somewhat of friction, or like something's happening at that point in time, but it has to be probably what the guest wants at that particular time. So I think that's such a great point, Jake. Alex, do you want to add into that, given that that's like, I think He could have
Yeah.
probably said that for your company.
A VP of asset protection told us once that he loves friction because for asset protection, friction is very important. I mean, if you want to buy a headphone and it's in one of these boxes, it's friction because it's harder to steal the product. It already that it's there, it's already preventing theft. So asset protection manager love friction. And now we are coming and say, hey, we have a frictionless solution. And that's in their mind, it's totally changed. It's not the retail itself, it's just particular asset protection inside of retail. So for us, it's very hard to find arguments why an asset protection guy should have a frictionless checkout. Because in the last decades, everyone was told them, you need friction to prevent theft. So for us, frictionless is a huge topic.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of crazy though, right? Like people are like, oh, we need to put friction in front of people giving us their money, right? And it's friction from theft, but it's also friction from sales. So I mean,
right.
you look at these stores and you go in and there's barely anyone working there, right? So then not only do you need to like look for the product, you also need to go hunt someone down to unlock it for you so you can buy it. And if you look at like the stats of people leaving when they can't find what they want, you know, that also applies to AP as well. So I think like, you know, I think when I first started pitching Radar, someone told me, oh, well, the goal is to keep people in the store as long as possible because that increases sales. The longer they spend, the more they're going to buy. And it's like, well, that may be true in that one instance, but they may also not return ever again, or they might not return frequently because it's not an easy experience to go in and out. So I think as you increase or decrease the friction, I think you'll see an increase in sales. You'll probably see an increase, you know, in trips, and you might see a decrease in the basket size per trip. But I think like I think retailers have gotten themselves into a tough position by trying to dictate how the customer should shop and what the process should be for them instead of just letting the customer decide the experience they want to have.
Choose your own adventure retailer.
Yeah.
Just allow me to buy the things that I want to buy when I want to buy them at the rate, and I want to interact with them before I buy them. It's pretty simple. I don't know. Just kidding. It's a very complex thing to solve. Jake, do you see that there is a question about LISNR in the mobile app and when Wi-Fi is low? Well, Matt had to leave, but
yeah, there we go. Yeah, absolutely. So it depends a little bit on the flow here, but our technology works entirely without the need for Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, any other protocols when it comes to sending that particular payload. In certain circumstances, if you know you're likely to have a low Wi-Fi area and you maybe want to bring up a multimedia experience, you have that preloaded onto the app. So we send through a smaller packet that triggers that experience. But there's no need when using our technology to have any other sort of data transfer methods. And a lot of the work we do is actually in developing countries where this becomes very relevant. But yes, no need for Wi-Fi.
What about like, so I guess the other question I had is are they asking like, oh, could you use LISNR to replace like the Wi-Fi connection in certain areas? That was kind of how I interpreted that question.
I mean, the short answer would be no, because our throughput is nowhere near a Wi-Fi sort of throughput. You're looking at maximum we have to production right now is 2,000 bits per second. So this is very, very quick in our space. Never been done before, but it's very slow for Wi-Fi. You're not going to be moving image files or anything like that. Probably 250 bytes is about as big a payload as you'd want to send through. So there's certain things you could definitely do to personalize that experience. Let's say there's no Wi-Fi, you wanted to send a paragraph worth of text, yes. But if you wanted to send an image that wasn't already preloaded and you didn't have Wi-Fi, then that's not a good use for ultrasonic data transfer.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. And we've talked about some use cases and things where LISNR could have come in handy when Target or other retailers have some outages with our internal systems, and how that if you could even just exchange kind of a payment token or do a checkout via mobile device or like an e-commerce transaction and then pay in store, some different use cases that kind of accounting for every technology to give out at some point and what could be a good fail-safe. I think LISNR is pretty cool in that regard. And then I think one other thing that Anouk followed up on of the Wi-Fi outside is a little bit tricky. We've done a handful of tests, and I think, Jake, you can kind of chime in here, but the guest Wi-Fi and even the store Wi-Fi as at Target is pretty strong, surprisingly. And so the associates/team members didn't actually experience any issues. I don't know. I imagine, obviously, the farther that you get away from a Target store, that you might run into those issues, but we didn't have any.
Yeah, I mean, most of the flows that we're involved with, the device can have low connectivity, because you can preload a lot of things. A lot of the decisioning can be done at the app level. So you don't need a constant flow of data coming from the Wi-Fi. And also there's, most devices have LTE. So that means that, we don't come across problems with our technology in limited Wi-Fi scenarios with the use cases that we address.
Awesome. Okay, I think that we are 10 minutes over time, but like I said, we can continue to chat about kind of the future of retail. One thing that I wanted to kind of bring up, and something that both Alex and Spencer learned a little bit about, was some of the Asian markets. And I think when we talk about the future of the store and fulfillment distribution, a lot of benchmarking is done with what's happening in the markets in Asia, just because of their efficiency of getting things to people is a lot quicker than the US markets right now. And curious at what your guys' thoughts, and I know that, or Alex, you're working in Germany, that I think is actually probably maybe a little bit behind the US, but you probably have your own. But in terms of benchmarking kind of other countries, or where you think the future of retail is heading and how your technologies can complement that, what are you guys predicting in terms of like what the future of the store will look like? Obviously, your technologies and companies will be a part of that, but what are some of your kind of predictions of what the US can expect as we've seen kind of this rapid acceleration with the pandemic?
I mean, I guess the one kind of like big call I want to say, like, if you look at, I think a lot of what people are looking at is what's happening in China, right? I think it's a little bit of an unfair comparison because there's a lot different in that market, from like, cost of living to cost of labor for doing anything, right? So, with Huma, they can deliver a product within 30 minutes, right? They can deliver groceries within 30 minutes. To do that in the US would cost significantly more to provide the same service. So I think basically it's indicative of where it's all going. I think like cost of living is going to increase, wages are going to increase in Asia. In the US, technology is going to help to level the playing field. I think but I think it's going to take some time for the US to catch up, just because there are certain things that like we're going to have to do with robotics because they're cost prohibitive that China can do, with team members. So I think that's a big difference there, and we're kind of seeing them leading the way first. So I think, yeah, it's like, how does technology make these things efficient? So that's kind of what we're seeing starting now, especially with the way shopping's changed. So I just wanted to call that out. But
no, I think that's great. One thing too, I think in that same regard, is some of the things that we've seen is like that still, one thing that I think remains is that it's still kind of rooted in the experience of the guest, of like, even if it's, super robotic or very autonomous, is that like there's still these like experiences that the guests can go in and get their food cooked, like when they're shopping, or like these very personal experiences that are happening as well. So I don't think, thinking about what a lot of people predicted the store of the future would be versus kind of what it's morphing into be, I think that there's going to be this interesting combination of things.
Yeah, just quickly, I think in terms of the US catching up, there's obviously certain elements through APAC that might be a little bit more advanced from physical shopping experience right now. I look at 2021 as a pretty unique opportunity for retailers to reconsider their user experience. In that right now, people are more tolerant than we've ever seen to inefficiencies. People are lining up 6 feet apart for hours, and they're like, well, this is the new normal. Well, it's the new normal for a minute. And on the other side of it, they're going to expect real efficiencies. And they're going to expect, like, BOPUS is not going anywhere. This is the opportunity for retailers to nail it while they have this little window. And on the other side of it, when things start to go back to a version of normal, whoever has the most seamless experience, whoever's taken advantage of this to shape customers' experience, like, people have to be taught how to alter their shopping behavior. And this is a unique opportunity for retailers to embrace whatever the store of the future looks like in their eyes.
The other irony of this whole thing is, like, I think BOPUS is kind of what, like, retail's always been, where it's like you go to the store and you pick it up, except you pay for it before you go there. So I think that it's kind of like a godsend for retail, because the highest margin way to deliver or sell a product is by having the customer go and do the last mile for you, right? And that's what BOPUS basically is. So they've gotten customers to be like, oh yeah, like, I'm doing BOPUS and
For free.
It's new. But really what you're doing is you're doing the job of, like, Postmates or Ship, right, for yourself. And you don't pay them, obviously, but you're paying your gas, et cetera, to go. So I think that's all good, because it's really picked up and it's bringing some strength back to physical retail. And, like, e-commerce was really hard to do because this whole last mile problem, it's expensive, managing the inventory, especially if you own and buy the inventory yourself, unlike Amazon. So I think it's actually been kind of like a godsend for the traditional retailers. And I think you're seeing, like, this kind of plateauing, or, like, this balancing out of, e-commerce eating away. Like, so the faster e-commerce gets, the more and more demand there will be for e-commerce, right? But it's going to reach a point where it's like, okay, it can't get that much faster, and it might not get to be within an hour without, the last mile problem, which becomes expensive. So then I think you're getting this, like, equilibration of e-commerce demand versus, like, urgent demand where you need it today, where as e-commerce gets tapped out. So I think, I don't know, it's gonna be interesting to see. So you're seeing, like, Amazon obviously opening up more and more physical stores because they recognize this issue. And then the question is, can they get, same hour delivery for everything? And then I think physical stores are in real trouble, but saving that, it's gonna, I think, be a good year for the traditional retailers. I don't know if that made any sense.
It made perfect sense. I was, like, allowing Alex to chime in if he wanted to.
To give some insight from another country, I mean, here in Germany, the pandemic is a great accelerator for mobile payment, for example, or for cashless payment at all. 1.5 years ago, 80% of all retail payments were in cash. So wow. There were stores in Germany where allowed to pay with a card when the value is below $20. So you have to spend more than $20. And then you can pay with a credit card, for example. And then the pandemic hit us, and everything changed, and now everybody wants a contactless payment. We are using NFC, we're using Apple Pay, we're using an Apple Watch and stuff like that. And now it works. And before, everyone was in retail was saying, no, that will never happen. Germans love to pay cash. They need the money in the hands. They need the money in the pocket, under the sheet in the bed. I don't know. And now it works. Yeah. And it took 3 months, and every retail has a contactless and a credit card payment in their store. So the pandemic, from this perspective, was an accelerator for a trend which was already in the US, in Asia. Now it's in Europe. I mean, even in Europe, it's different. In the UK, for example, it's like the US, and when you go to France or Germany, it's completely different. The retail or the customer behavior at all. But it will change. It always changed in the past, but the pandemic, I would say, speeded it up. Speeded it up. I love what you're touching on there. I think consumer behaviors will consistently change. There's, like, this weird fear that I have sometimes, I think, in my job of, going out into the innovative ecosystems that I work in and meeting with you all and being like, wow, there's only so many things that can be solved. And I swear I've, like, seen
like after you guys get it integrated into Target, like there's nothing else to be solved. But
That's it.
it's a crazy fear. It's not a fear, but I think that there's like this aspect of consumer behavior that consistently shifts. I think Spencer, what you brought up of like how guests are like buy online, pick up in store, how this is all of a sudden it has a name and we're talking about it and how do we address it when it's like, it's really the kind of very basic aspect of what retail has always been. But I think there's even a shift there. We had a company in the program a couple of years ago that was doing more of like a crowdsourced delivery type of thing of like, it's a friend social group. And so if you're like, hey, I'm going to Target, oh, I'll also pick up your order for like pennies on the dollar compared to Shipt or these other delivery platforms. But I think in that sense, consumer behaviors just continue to shift. And that's probably the most unpredictable thing that we're all working against of like, wow, all of a sudden people are buying things on, I don't even know, platforms that I am not on, obviously, TikTok and all of these other things. That's not that far out for me, but very interesting.
Yeah. No, it's super interesting. Like also like D2C and like how that impacts like a retailer like Target, right? Because now it's okay, like I can market directly to my own customer base. I don't necessarily need like a platform to do that anymore. Because there are other platforms, right, that can facilitate it. So that's interesting. Like, how does that affect your relationship with like a P&G over time, which is like a huge partner of yours? And then I guess, I don't know, one of the things I think about with the BOPIS thing is, I think part of it's like wanting confidence that if you're going to go there, the product's there, right? So like people have had this experience of going there many, many times and it not being there. And if that's the case, then they probably want to know it's going to be there or they're going to buy it online, right? So it's interesting to see if that will change, if like BOPIS will become less important if, inventory accuracy is higher and, they can have confidence they always have stuff. Or I don't know. Anyway.
I love just the thought. You guys feel free to hop in at any point here. I'm going to address Anook's question here. We talked a little bit earlier in the session about how Target, as well as in each one of the startups here, are focusing their capabilities or how they were building their companies to focus both on guests as well as the team members or the store employees and how they're equally as critical. So hopefully, we can probably touch a little bit on that if we wanted to, but I think that that's just equally as important now as it was when we discussed it, but focusing on guests. And I think this actually kind of makes me go down a couple of different paths here, is that Target has said this for a while, is that our team members that are in the stores, we want obviously to pay fair wages or very competitive wages. I think probably at that point the highest in the industry, but then so that they can really be specialists in stores, so that they're helping you find the products that you want and what you need. And I think thinking about consumer demand, or what we're seeing now, is it blows my mind sometimes when I go onto an e-commerce site or even Target and you see products that have tens, if not hundreds of thousands of reviews of like, that is insane. And I don't think I ever imagined a world in that I would look at a product and it would have 100,000 reviews. Like, what is the 100,001 comment or like review even helpful at that point? Like, it's really not going to affect the star rating. It's not going to really do much. So I think even like the aspect of what do reviews mean now, I actually think it kind of shifts the appeal of like startups, especially in the CPG space, even more so, of like, you can buy a product that millions of people have tried and liked, but it's kind of maybe more compelling now to try products that are new or innovative or have a social mission or, are more aligned with what you're working on. I'm just talking now, so feel free to fill the space. I think we will cut this off at 1:30, so feel free to get your last questions in. I'm not totally understanding the question from Kevin, and I am concerned about some of the word verbiage, so I'm not going to answer it. But I will maybe try to rack my brain of how those two things compare.
I mean, I don't know. Did we touch on Anouk's question yet?
I think it's really just fulfillment and how it can help store employees. So guests versus store employees, or in my reading that I not.
Yeah,
reading.
no, I think so. I think like, I don't know. I think that one of the things that we envision over time is like a job that can be done by a computer is like maybe that of the transaction completion at the cash wrap, right? A job that can't be done by a computer is like helping the customer and providing expertise and knowledge, as you said, Sarah. So I think, it would be awesome for like Target and other retailers if, they could actually have more people on the sales floor helping customers, more people fulfilling, orders, which is also something that, computers can't do, and actually impacts the experience. I think I predict that, yeah, you're going to see a lot of shift from like cashier roles over to fulfillment and, customer service, in particular.
Yeah, from the retail point of view, a cashier is not bringing value to anybody. It's just collecting money. So if these people could consult or fulfill or whatever, do a real value for the company and the customer, say that's the shift. I don't think that we see in future that we get rid of the stuff or real Amazon Go. I mean, even in the Amazon Go are more people working as in a normal supermarket from the same size, because doing the fresh, they're reporting, they're in the background, and this will be also in the future that we need the human in the chain. As Spencer said, not from unnecessary tasks like collecting money.
Yeah, I think that's a good point in terms of, it always frustrates me when the scripted line of, did you find everything you wanted today, happens at checkout. Because invariably, if I haven't, it's too late. And I have seen in certain places where someone's gone, no, I didn't find X, how the entire line is gone. It's like, in this case, it's grocery. They're not set up to actually, if someone says I didn't find it, no one knows what to do. Now, if you can get that associate away from the register and out actually helping someone, you're going to differentiate in the experience, and you may increase cart size, certainly much more likely than the throwaway question as someone checks out.
Yeah, imagine if you are in the checkout line and the cashier says, hey, nice trouser, if you took a belt, you get 20% off. Going out of the queue to take a belt.
Yep.
And in e-commerce, it's normal. Right.
Absolutely.
Love it. Thank you for the clarification, Kevin. Yeah, I think when I was mentioning watching some of the Asian markets, I think that their aspect, I think Spencer touched a little bit on this, of some of the capabilities that they have to deliver groceries in less than 30 minutes to guests, or some of the customer experiences that they have in store, I think are in some ways ahead of where the US market is at, or they've had Alipay now for probably close to 10 years. I don't know, probably not. In my mind, it's close to 10 years. So I think that that's something that we've looked at as kind of like, where are some trends heading? But we a little bit, that's all kind of the connection that I was making there. This has been so wonderful, and I'm super excited. I think that there was, okay, cool. Perhaps you could drop details and tell people where they can reach you. Thanks, Jeff. Yes, I think Jake, Spencer, Alex, please feel free to drop your emails or whatever best form to connect with you guys is at. I will also drop my email in the chat, as well as feel free to go to targetaccelerators.com. You can learn about, we have a tech accelerator. We're constantly evaluating technologies that might help improve the value chain for Target, as well as some accelerator programs that are designed for CPG companies, so getting products onto shelves. But thank you, Jake, thank you, Spencer, thank you, Alex. You guys are delightful and wonderful, and I appreciate you. We talk regularly. I think I talk to each one of you probably once a week. So I will talk to you next week, but very much appreciate your guys' thoughts and the presentations.
We talk like every day, actually, now these days. Yeah.
What, Spencer?
We've been talking like every day these days, I feel like.
Yes. Spencer watched me brush my daughter's hair last night as we were debriefing about a demo call.
Indeed.
So when I joke, I'm like, these people are my friends. I am like, that's the type of friendships I have. I think I've done probably the same, if not, I'll say worse, but better with both Jake and Alex as well.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, guys.